Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Urban Fantasy Tracks discussion of Supernatural Season 15, episode number 16. Is that right? 16 or 15? I'm losing track myself at this point. Yes, number 16. And of Drag Me Away From You. And are looking forward to hearing the thoughts of our viewers. And we do have some topics that we're going to be bringing up. And if you have any comments, please go ahead and type them in for us, and we will be happy to share them. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get started with our panelists introducing themselves. And first up, we have our guest panelist this week, Marks.
Hey, everybody. My name is Marks Pyle. I'm an indie filmmaker, author of book, Television on the Wild Wild Web, co-host of the podcast Genretainment, and I'm writing an urban fantasy book series. It hasn't come out yet, but I'm working out with my MFA, and I just love Supernatural. I've been watching it ever since the very first episode came out.
Thank you. And Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail Z. Martin, and I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, steampunk, post-apocalyptic, and more. And I'm a huge Supernatural fan. Love the show. Kind of went down the rabbit hole full steam, and so I'm happy to be here.
Well, and we're happy to have you here. And yeah, when you say rabbit hole, that does happen, doesn't it? Okay, and Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Dulgner. I write paranormal fiction and nonfiction. And 15 years of my supernatural life are coming to a close. So here we go. Oh,
that just sounds wrong. I mean, the way you put that, it just sounds, that sounds so sad. We can't have that. That's we don't want to do sad here at this fun time. Damien.
Hey, I'm Damien. I write in crayon on walls and I eat paste. No, seriously. Everyone's like, I write. I'm like, I write my name on checks occasionally. But no, seriously, I am a fan panelist for DragonCon for here at the Urban Fantasy Trek. I've been covering Supernatural as the fan panel at DragonCon since the very beginning. And I'm now a podcaster. I do this podcast. I do a podcast for needcoffee.com. Called the Weekend Justice Podcast. I do a podcast called Stuff We Love, Stuff We Hate over on SoundCloud and YouTube. And on Freely.tv, I also help co-host a show now called Drink and Critique, where we go back through and we do a couple of different drinking critiques of different pop culture shows.
Cool. You. It seems to change every week, man. You seem awfully busy. I'm really honored.
It really does change every week. It's like, can you be here? Can you sub on this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I want to know. I was the guy for years on our panel that I didn't have a podcast.
So now, I want to know what you're drinking when you're critiquing and how much of it.
Well, there you go.
Coffee.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like fun. Yes. Okay, and Kristen.
Hi, my name is Kristen Jackson. I'm a graphic designer, freelance artist, and I work in film on different sorts of film projects. And I've been a panelist in the Urban Fantasy DragonCon for about 5-6 years now, I think.
I think it's been close to that. Yeah. It's been close to that anyway.
When we first did the Supernatural fandom movie, that first premiere episode screening, the very first time it aired for anybody was in the DragonCon Urban Fantasy track panel. So
yeah, I think poor you. You kind of were. You kind of, I guess, went from the frying pan to the fire, or maybe just directly to the fire, because the very first thing you did to me, the very first thing you did for the track was to actually to screen that movie or that preview, not the whole thing, but the movie or the preview of it. And I thought, boy, you had never even been to Dragon Con before, so that was quite a surprise, was it?
That was an experience, but it was a lot of fun, and that's why I really enjoy these panels with you, is the chance to talk about the show and every other sort of show, and that you cover in these tracks. It's a lot of fun, and it makes the experience of the show. For me, that's one of the things I enjoy the most, is being able to share with friends.
Exactly, and we're all friends here, so and we always have a great time. Now, as far as the episode itself goes, one of the things that struck me about it was how much, or what the importance of the different imagery, and just the way that the scenes themselves were shot, and especially things like, when they show the Impala driving up, and it's one set of people. It's Jared and Jensen driving up, or not them, but Dean and Sam driving up, and I guess I'm differentiating the actors in my head. Same characters, different actors, and but then when we see the car pull up and the door opens, and the legs that come out belong to the kids rather than the adults. And so that's the beginning of we know then that we're back in time and all this. And they do that several times, those kinds of segues. And I thought it was really interesting. And I'm curious, were there any particular instances of things like that really spoke to you, or that you were particularly impressed with in the episode? And Marks, we'll start with you. Just visually, things that they did.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't really think that much about it for that film. I think I did like the back and forth of present and past, because it reminded me a little bit of It, a little bit like we're getting these dual stories of present and past. We know the monster they faced when they were a kid. And so I really like that. And I think they did a good job, as you said. One thing that's really good. Well, I think when you're doing past and present scenes, I think the transitions are extremely important, and they need to be clear so you don't ever get confused either. And that sometimes they do it audible sound, like in Lost, for example, is real well known for that. And I think they handle that. The director and editors handle it really well. So I really liked seeing things like young Dean with that necklace again. Those little things that, as a fan, you're really like, oh yes, I missed that necklace.
Okay, great, Gail.
Yeah, I loved getting to see the boys as kids again. I think probably the best visual for me was him getting grabbed in that vending machine. I am never reaching for a cat. And that really reminded me a lot of The Shining, the hallway scenes.
Right. Yeah.
When that hand came up in the vending machine, it reminded me of the drowned lady in The Shining, because the skin had that kind of odd texture. And I thought they did a lot of that with the hallway confrontation between Dean now and Ghost Dean. And so those were giving me real Stephen King feels.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, good point. Yeah, the show does do that on occasion. But you're right. Those were very direct, kind of, maybe even homages. Who knows, right? Beth.
I'm like Gail. That hand in the vending machine. I mean, I jumped literally, and I thought it was kind of fun to have an episode that's just a good full-on spooky episode. But for as much as it was kind of standalone in the storyline, I think it also really drove the story forward in regards to the boys, but about their relationship and being honest with each other. So I thought they really gave it a nice mix of kind of that old and new, that looking back as well as being very current and relevant to what's going on with them now.
Okay. Damien.
For me, I think it was a nod definitely to the actors who played them as their younger versions visually. they really kept a lot of the visual mannerisms and tics that each of the boys have. But it also goes to show just how much hasn't changed. And I'm like, good Lord, this is now 20 something years later. And you're still kind of carrying on the exact same way. But the other part was, them addressing the visual difference of, man, the hotel looks smaller. And it's like, well, we're bigger now, right? And then you go inside, and the rest of the hotel really did not change from that time period. It was
Right.
still
Now that's a good
pretty much
point.
the
Yeah.
same, right? And they pointed that out. It's like, great, this hasn't been updated. I mean, the first thing I'm thinking is, I'm not sleeping on those sheets.
Yeah.
Right.
Kristen, what about you?
Let's see. For me, I really did think the editing on this episode, where you're changing between the two stories, was a lot smoother and a lot cleaner and made more sense than last week with the jumps back and forth between the two stories.
Yes.
I did check. I just checked, and no, the room number was not with The Shining. I was like, wait a minute, is that room number the same? No, it wasn't the same. Not the same. That would have been funny though. If they had.
Yeah, that would have. Yeah.
And where they found a boggle game, I would love to know, because that game was so much fun. So, and I jumped a bit when all the boggle pieces went up in the air and the lights went out. That's
good
for me,
scare.
that was a tiny bit of a jump scare right there.
Yeah, and I think something else that got me too, when I talked about in the beginning, when you'd see the legs getting out of the car, or the legs coming out of the car, that they belong to the younger versions, and rather than the adults, and sometimes those kind of switches were done when one of them was walking down a hallway, and then when they turn the corner, all of a sudden it's it's somebody from the past, or if it was the other way around. So that was cool. But one of the things that I thought was really that really had a lot of bearing on the series as a whole was when it was after young Dean had been giving young Sam a hard time about carrying around the college guide, and he had taken the things out of his bag, and he had a gun and a knife and a college guide all sitting next to each other. And I thought, dang, if that doesn't explain Sam's life in images, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
So, that I just thought that was very significant as well. Now, and my next question is, did you feel as though this was kind of an apt or appropriate time, I guess, from they, of course, they don't have many left, but in terms of for the flow of these last few episodes, did you feel as though it was a good time for them to pick to do this, a flash, what was essentially a flashback episode, and yet, it was juxtaposed with what was going on in, currently. And again, I thought that some of what happens kind of harkened back again to Amara's statement about, then or now is always better than then. And so that kind of made me think about all of those things. So I'm curious about how you guys feel about whether you felt as though it came at the right point in this last, wind down of the series. And Gail, you're up first this time.
Sure. Two quick things that I didn't mention on the visuals. One is, I want to know how they get hotel rooms that are that big. I've never made a hotel room that was that big that wasn't a suite. Certainly not at a cheap hotel. And theirs are always huge. The other thing was the other visual on that boggle game, where all the words they were coming up with from it were very dire.
Oh, yeah.
Not your usual boggle game unless you're playing serial killers. So those two things. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that. I like the episode overall. I like seeing the flashbacks. And it was Sam and Dean centric. So it wasn't like the last episode where we had to split our attention from them with Cass and Jack. And Sam actually got to talk in this episode, which he really didn't get to do much in the last one. So that was all good. I think that there were some places where I thought the characters were a little, I have to admit, I groaned on the fight at the end. It's like, really, we have 4 episodes left and they're not going to have the boys on the same page. We do not have time for this. I want to see unified Winchesters, not fighting Winchesters. So that annoyed me. And I really hope that gets resolved quickly. So, yeah, I mean, there's probably something in it that is more weighty and connected than we may be seeing right now. Maybe there's something in the past that's really going to make a difference in the issue with Chuck. But maybe it's one of those answers in the college handbook. But yeah, I liked it better than last time, and I thought it was well done. I was surprised that it's the first time this writer has written for Supernatural, and there is a part of me going, last 5 episodes in the series, and we're trying out a new writer? Really, guys?
Right.
Thought she did well, but there were a couple of places, like I said, that I thought were out of character, and I wondered if that was why. But yeah, overall, I'm okay with it. Better than I was with last week's.
Okay. Well, talking about the things being out of character, one thing that struck me as being terrifically in character is young Dean saying, "This ain't the friggin' Goonies," when he was, and I thought, if that doesn't sound like Dean, I don't know what does. So some of the stuff she got right anyway. Beth, what about you?
I would say that I spent probably the first half of the episode kind of going, is a flashback episode what we really need right now? And I enjoyed it, and it was really fun to see Sam and Dean in a tacky old motel room again, because we haven't had that in a while. So I really like that aspect. But I do feel I'm kind of with Gail. We're getting into the last episodes, and every moment is precious for driving the story forward. So I was watching it going, yeah, this is fun, but I don't quite see how it fits in, when we're ramping up to the grand finale. But again, I think that it made some interesting points about, Sam and Dean are reminded that they are better when they are honest with each other. And I think too, that whatever might happen in the next 4 episodes, this was again a look back and a reminder, kind of like you said, Carol, with Amara's thing about then and now. We're seeing all these years and years and years in between them as children in this episode and where they are now, and the incredible number of experiences they've had and the growth that they have had. So I think maybe it was kind of preparing us for whatever's coming next week, maybe.
Good point. And it's also a way to make those comparisons. You see, it's kind of like sometimes things change a lot, and then in other ways they don't change that much at all. Mm-hmm. So it's like going back to a town you haven't been in 20 years. That there are aspects of it that always seem the same, and yet other parts that you're like, wait a minute, where'd that come from? That wasn't here before. Mm-hmm. Damien, what about you?
So I do think it made more. It fit better than last week's episode for sure. Do I think within the last 4 episodes should there have been a Sam Dean disagreement fight? With the way it's set up, sure, right? I'm okay with that. When you look back at this episode and you look back at them as kids and how they've handled things, and then you look at how they handle things now, and they've gotten better some, but then it's always like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, always. It's a consistent thing with them. So it felt right. It felt natural for this to go down with the way that Dean talks to Sam in the beginning. Very much is how Dean sometimes talks to Sam right now. despite all of the stuff that they've been through, right? And then even still, it harkens back to, you look at the beginning of the episode, how Dean was speaking to Sam about going to college. And then you look at the end of the episode where Dean's talking to Sam about, we don't have time for this right now, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, wow, right? And you see the look on Sam's face, and Sam's like, you know what? I've had it with this, right?
Right.
Right? Zip it. Don't say another word. I'm basically, I'm not a kid anymore, and I don't have to listen to this. And it makes sense from that standpoint, where this is who they are. Is it poor timing that, we're trying to go kill God? Absolutely. But it fits, right? I look at certain things like that have happened in even my own life in the past week, right? And it's been like, okay. And you know what I've been doing? I've been arguing with siblings the entire time, right? In a time where you don't need to be arguing with siblings, I'm arguing with my siblings, or at least the ones that are actually bothering to participate and pick up the phone. So yeah, for me, I'm like, that works. That's real.
Well, and I think for me, the issue that I've had, and I know I've mentioned this several times over the years at DragonCon on panels, is that I don't like it when those disagreements go on for several episodes. Well, I don't have that luxury this time. But I get what Gail means. It's like we don't need to go there. But I do believe that what I agree with Damien, that it actually fit the situation. So how they're going to resolve it will be interesting to see. Kristen, what about you?
Yeah, well, for me, it was almost like a mini version of a greatest hits, where you had the sibling fight in the car, you had the ghost, you had the killing of the ghost, you had a little bit of brotherly joking back and forth, you had the motel rooms, you had Sam doing research on the computer, you had Dean going off to hunt something. So it was almost like a little miniature capsule of what the show is in one episode.
Right.
And then you also saw some of the difference in the growth of the characters between then and now. They're especially like with Sam being much more assertive than he had been back then. So that to me that was a nice, even though, yes, they were fighting, and I was like, oh, for the love of God, can you just go to the final 4 episodes with no more fights? And then, the no more secrets. And when Sam had said that line and you just saw it go ding right at Dean. But, for me, I liked the episode just because I know that the last final episodes are just going to get progressively more traumatic.
Right.
And this was kind of like a way to showcase the little moments of the entire 15 years in one episode.
Ah, okay. Nice way to look at it. And Marks.
Yeah, I liked how it was scary. Like Sam and Dean have saved the world many times now. It's become harder to have scary episodes with them, and I think they did a good job of a lot of scares.
They did, yes.
I also like I from folklore, like Baba Yaga. It's something you don't see very often in live action, and so it's cool they did that. They could have done. I mean, I wanted to see a house with giant chicken legs, but besides that, at least we got Baba Yaga in some way. So, and I do like seeing the kids again, just because it is probably the last time we'll see a flashback ever in the show. So it's nice to get one more in this season. And I thought the kids did a really great job, especially the one that played Dean. I thought did a good job capturing that character. But yeah, the argument part was kind of like, I was like many of you kind of roll my eyes going, not again,
Right.
But I do agree with Damien that it makes sense. It's a way to complicate things, with their relationship before they go into battle. And but it'll show growth in a way, even though Dean didn't get credit for it. He could have kept that secret a lot longer, and he did, reveal it. So it's a little growth on Dean's part. Sam's not going to see it that way, but
and then that text from Kaz, have you told him yet? And it's like, oh god, that was kind of funny. and we have a comment here that I feel like these last couple of episodes were homages to the Supernatural start with the Case of the Week format. And that's a good point, that, it goes back to one of those cases of what it must have been like. Because we used to hear about how they would get dropped off at the hotels or motels, or, that their dad would just drop them off somewhere and then he'd go off and, take care of whatever and leave them there on their own. So, and then, yes, Damien's response was the kind of ending where we started. Do any of you want to address this topic, this comment from Renita here? Aside from Damien, who already said kind of back where it started.
Yeah, I'm just keeping my eye on the chat.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
I think it is
too, but I try to add the stuff at the, at the right time.
In the beginning of the season, we got ghosts that they fought before, right? A few of them at least, and so that was a nice return to that. So now we're getting more like the format, kind of a return to that, and all these flashbacks we used to get with the kids. That's that too. I think they're right.
Well,
we're
and I
also
think
getting a lot more friends that they've missed or grown up with that we haven't known about.
Right, that too.
Where
Never
it
did.
kind of fits with the monster of the week of, oh yeah, we killed that thing. It's like, no, you didn't, and now you've got to go back and clean up this mess when you're in the middle of doing other things. But they even had the argument, and it's something we said on the podcast a few weeks ago, which was like, when he killed what's his name? I can't think of his name right now. I'm drawing a blank. The hunter that he was really, really close to that owned the bar.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And they were like, well, is it the right time to be introducing friends? And it's like, well, they've had lots of friends, and they actually apparently heard us and went, hey, there are a bunch of people that we were much closer to that got killed that we didn't even show up to their funerals. Why are we showing up for this? Right? And it's like, well, at least you made it make sense that, okay, you're hearing yourselves as you're writing this in a way.
Yeah, when they said that line, I thought the same thing. It's like, the writers are like, this is why they're doing this.
Let's get it.
Well, and it was something you said, Damien, made me realize that sometimes we need to remember that. I have to remind myself sometimes when I'm watching, is that this almost feels as though it's a separate mini season, because it's been so long since we saw. Well, it's been so many months that since we've seen any new episodes, and then to realize that no, these came right along after they were actually already filmed, even before the pandemic. So the ones we've seen so far. So but it is sometimes weird to think that you have to remind yourself of that, or at least I do. And we have another comment here about that. She was surprised that Taz texted. So, yeah.
It took him 2 hours to do that.
Yeah. That was true. That's true. He seems to have the phone calls down pat, but
Jack probably sent it.
Yeah, probably.
That could be.
Do this.
That could be, yeah.
Do you think that might be a reason that the episode we saw last was maybe in those final weeks right during the pandemic shutdown, which is why the editing might have seemed more rushed?
Right.
That they were trying to just get the thing done before everybody had to, clock out and go home and sit around for a few months,
Well, the stories I read though said that they actually had finished filming, but that they didn't have the post-production done.
Post-production, yeah.
Right.
But was that? I thought it was. So would that last episode that we saw last week, would that have been finished and completely ready to broadcast back then, or was that one of the ones that was?
No, but I thought
that
they had. Yeah, I thought that they had to break before they got to do the post-production, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought that they did. I don't know if that's partly because they would have wanted them to be around. Some of you more familiar with actual film production might know better than I would, but that was what that was the way I understood it, is that when they shut down, everybody left, even the
Yeah.
people doing the post.
Yeah,
And that they had to wait till everybody came back before I think some of them went back a little before the cast did, so they could do some of that. But you could be right anyway, Kristen, that would be something that
might
make it
explain
feel a little
that just
different.
kind of uneven, whereas this one was very polished, the transitions between the scenes. Like somebody had more time to think about it, type of thing.
And they did. I mean, it was. I thought it was really well done. Now, something that kind of is in keeping with the topic that we've been discussing, a little bit about the argument, was that at the end, right before Dean comes clean with Sam, before they're leaving, Caitlin tells Dean that getting older, you tell the truth more, because lies, they don't make anything better. And I think, is that true in the context of the show? I mean, is there a lesson there, for the characters? Do you feel as though that's something that has been explored in the past, given their different situations and how they respond to them? And Beth, we'll start with you this time.
I feel like that's a statement that's maybe more relevant for Dean than it is for Sam, because I think he has this history of hiding things from Sam, and he tells himself he's doing it to protect his brother, and it's for Sam's good, and it never works out that way. It always winds up being detrimental to whatever it is that's going on. But I think it's interesting that 2 weeks ago we had Amara giving Sam like this little piece of wisdom, and then this week he gets another little piece of wisdom. So it's like these people are coming in to kind of help guide him on the way, and I don't know if that was intentional. I'm guessing probably not, since different writers for the episodes, but I just thought it was interesting that 2 weeks in a row now Dean has had people come in to kind of give him a little piece of life advice, essentially, like he's being prepared for something. But yeah, I feel like, Dean has always not lied to Sam necessarily, but definitely withheld information. He's got a bad history of doing that, and again, it never works out well. He should know by now.
So in other words, her statement was true then, in the context of the show, as far as you're concerned, and as far as Dean goes. Okay, Damien. We lost your.
There you
go. I am laughing about what was said in the chat window.
Okay.
Which was, with all of the kids going missing in this town, why in the world is John dropping the kids off?
Yeah, this is good. This is good. Yeah.
Maybe
that's a good point. Now we already know that John Winchester had many issues as a father, but yes, that's a very good point.
Making good decisions was not one of them. I'm going to drop you off at this seedy motel. Yes, we're hunters, and kids have been going missing, but I'm going to leave you alone anyway.
That should have been the opening scene. You see the missing posters, and then the car just drives up and pulls him. They get out.
Right. You can see John Winchester go, hey. Don't die.
And if he didn't know, why didn't he know? And if he did know, why did he do it? So, yeah, either way, it's like, John Winchester failed again.
Back then. Right?
What's
Those
that?
kids had already been missing for like a couple of weeks, but hadn't quite made it to the milk carton or the post office yet.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Gotcha. They were just the missing posters up all over town. Okay.
If they had posters, they might not even had copy machines. You saw them. Those were at-home artist sketches done by Bubba.
Okay. Well, they've played their role on the show in the past too. But anyway, okay. So Damien, back to my question.
Which was, because we've gotten so off track now, I can't.
Oh, okay. Just in regard to Caitlin's comment to Dean, that it was during the conversation where she asked him, which I thought was also an interesting conversation, when she said, well, weren't you scared, or were you scared, during this recent event? And he said, I'm always scared. And she said, well, the younger you would never have admitted that. And then she says, this getting older, you tell the truth more, because lies, they don't make anything better. And so my question was, do you think that has been demonstrated throughout the show fairly well?
I think we've thoroughly vetted the fact that them withholding the truth. Look, we keep calling it other names, right? Them lying, right? You can say, oh, well, I just kind of glossed over, or he withheld the truth, or he just didn't tell him right then. No, okay, he's lying, okay? That first and foremost, it's lying. He does it every season. This is not new behavior. I'm with Beth. He should know better by now, right? This should not take as long, right? This shouldn't take a text from Cass going, hey, did you tell him? Did you tell him yet? Then the guilt prod. And then the way he even told him, it wasn't that great either, right? It was more along, hey, here's what's going to happen, and you got to be okay with it type deal.
Right. Yeah, he didn't seem, the least bit sympathetic at the time.
Right, and Sam's like, oh, back up here.
Yeah, he's
like, holding from me this whole time? And it was like, Dean, what in the world? I was like, oh, well, clearly didn't make the situation any better.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm wondering what else is being withheld.
Yeah. Well, that may come up in what I was going to say future episodes. And I just realized there aren't that many. Kristen, what about you?
One of the lines that Dean said that really struck me kind of harsh was when in the car, when Dean said, I didn't think you could handle it. And it's like, oh, come on, after all that they've been through,
right.
For everything, the one thing Sam can handle is bad news.
Right.
So that was just kind of a really cutting remark that I thought was very unworthy of Dean to say to Sam. Especially, the fact that he was the one that was, sort of called out again for keeping things secret. And then to accuse Sam of not being able to handle it, I was like, dude, that is wrong. That is not fair.
Well, again, too, right. And again, too, though, it kind of, I think, fits along with the whole idea of that we're getting to see their interaction when they were younger, because it's just another piece of him treating Sam the way that they did when they were younger, that thinking that he has to protect him from everything. It's like, after, as you said, after as much as he's been through, how can you think he, can't handle that news, even if he is not going to like it? But I think maybe what Dean, this is going to be, that'll have bearing on the next question, but I think maybe he was, a little bit more concerned about his reaction and Dean's lack of reaction than probably the end result. But anyway, Marks, what about you?
Yeah, I think it was a missed opportunity where Dean could have been cursed like a Pinocchio curse, and his nose could just grow bigger.
That would be a great future episode, but oh well.
We needed it three seasons ago.
That's right.
Well, yeah. So, one way to create conflict between two or more people is keep secrets, right? So it's a tried and true method. The trick is not to overdo it and make sure their motivations make sense. So it's not just being done so the writer can create conflict. But I think it worked well here because it was playing with this. That was the whole theme of the episode. And also, I think it makes sense in your cutting remark about you couldn't handle it. It shows that he still thinks of him as that little kid from those flashbacks. So I think that's very fitting too for that episode. But I hopefully this won't be a conflict for much longer. But it'll be interesting to see. And and this is not exactly related, but one thing that's been bugging me a little bit is about Billy and his whole plan in the book. I just kind of wonder what her secrets are she keeping, because she hasn't really like laid out the whole plan. She's just giving him little seeds here and there. So,
Right,
The
she
nothing
tells
is
them what
still out
to
there
do.
too.
Who?
The nothing is still out there too, or the empty.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
we
The empty.
forget that
Yeah.
that's a whole character that's just sitting there, and the last time we saw it was her, Jack, and Death. So
Mhm.
Yeah, they've got some stuff to do in 4 more episodes, that's for sure. And
Or
Gail,
Lucifer.
Yeah.
Lucifer too. She was
yeah,
hanging around.
Kinda.
Couple of things. One is, when you were talking about dropping the boys off at this town that has all these missing kids, the other thing that struck me as slightly out of character was we know that Dean was really scarred by the Striga incident where he didn't pay attention to Sam and then Sam almost got killed. And then not only did he feel terribly guilty about it, but John like really wailed on him about it. So that the idea that he'd go off to fight it by himself and leave Sam alone struck me as odd, especially since, okay, they didn't know all the stuff they know now, but he didn't even say stay in the salt circle. I thought that was just odd, given that we know that Dean as an adult is still feels guilt about not protecting Sam from the Striga. I thought that, on the lying piece, Sam's done his share as well. I mean, not telling Dean that he was going to college, not being honest about Ruby or the demon blood, not saying that he had burned the Book of the Damned when he didn't. There have been a number of times Sam didn't play fair either. And it's always come back to bite both of them. I thought when Dean said you can't handle it, I flashed to the last 2 terrible ideas, which was the Mallet box, which Sam said, "Oh hell no, you're not going to do that. I'm not going along with this. I'll drive with you, but I'm not going along with this." And then when Chuck gave them the equalizer and Dean was all for shooting Jack and dying at the same time, and Sam just had his little come to Jesus moment with Dean and said, "I am not losing both of you. And we're not doing it this way." So from Dean's perspective, that may be Sam not handling it, in that Sam didn't go along with him. I don't trust Billy more than I can throw her, especially
right.
Is back on exactly Chuck's note of, well, Abraham and Isaac, father's got to kill the son. So the other thing I wondered is Dean also skeptical, but since you never know what Billy overhears, is he playing this role for Billy's sake, but actually skeptical? Because it seems very odd that that conversation in the diner when he said, she just said, well, you're going to have to kill Jack. And he's like, okay, there wasn't even a pushback after we've seen what happened with Chuck in the cemetery. Thought that was either really awful writing, or that was Dean going, I'm going to pick my battle with an all-powerful entity here. And I'm still wondering if it's really Billy.
Well, because something that Gail just said, though, makes sense. Remember, Dean was stuck in that library for a while. Maybe it's something in what he read while he was stuck in there.
Which library?
A while back when Dean was actually dead, technically, or with death the entire time, and all the books were in there. Maybe there's something Dean is withholding that we just don't know yet. And it could be, like you said, where he's just like, yeah, I'm just going along and I don't know what she can hear, so I'm just going to play it. Because she does kind of just pop up out of nowhere.
And she's not right, because we started out with the whole library of all of the ways you could die. That was down to 1 volume, and the only way this can possibly work is to be the Mallet box. Look, it's all just 1 volume. And then it wasn't. So again, either bad writing or Billy isn't as omniscient as she'd like them to think, because they must be back up now to more books.
Yeah. I thought of one thing that probably is not going to come up, but I thought of one thing, big picture, that could come up in this story if they wanted to. If it was supposed to have a big picture element, is the idea of Baba Yaga being able to cheat death through that ring. If that gives them an idea of some workaround with Jack, when he tries to kill himself, if they try to obviously destroy the ring, which is not that easy to smash with a gun, by the way. I don't think. But if that's something that they wanted to seed in on a larger level, that could be something. Probably isn't. It's
The
probably
other
just
thing that made me wonder if it's really Billy and not God, Chuck, using Billy as a puppet or a persona, is he's back to the Jack killed your mother. You need to punish him for that. It's right that he died because he killed your mother. We already went down that road in the cemetery, and Dean refused. So to have Billy come back with almost the same argument seems more like Chuck, who won't let go of, but I like this story, than it does Billy.
Yeah, well, in that Amara conversation, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, well, just let me tag on to something that struck me about the conversation with Dean and Death, is that she did not say that Jack had to die. She didn't spell it out like that. She said that was what he was going to do because he felt the need to atone for killing Sam and Dean's mother. That's how he was going to make things right. So she didn't actually say that he had to die. It's just that was Jack's way of doing it. So I thought, well, that sounds like a really big omission where it comes off as like, yeah, he has to die, but she didn't say those words. So that really made me think. I want to go back and rewatch that scene very closely, because from what I remember, she didn't say that he was going to die. It's that he was going to die because that was his choice.
Yeah, what I wrote down were not any direct quotes from that scene, but that she did tell Dean that Jack only wants his forgiveness and thinks that releasing him from the hamster wheel, which was a quote, will do it. And then she looks at Dean and says, "Was I wrong?" So, but I
so
didn't
that sounds like
you're right.
There's an escape clause there that there could be another path. It's just that this is the one that seems to be either the easiest or the one that she convinced Jack that, yeah, he's got to do this. But that sounded like there was a whole nother way this could be played out. And maybe Dean, maybe that's why he didn't push back. Maybe he heard between the lines too, that she didn't actually come out and say, yes, this is, Jack has to die because this is how you defeat everybody. So it was just like one little line, but it really caught my attention.
Thumbs up.
Well, that's a good point. Now, here is a comment we have that Billy said something about not appearing anymore because Chuck doesn't have her in the story. I found that weird since they are supposed to be off script with this plan to kill Chuck in the darkness. And that's a good point as well. Because yes, she did say that in the beginning of that conversation, or they were talking about how, well, this is not the way it's going, that he, we're not doing what he wants right here. Anybody want to, I'll put it back up. Anybody want to comment on this directly?
Well, yeah, she's got to go have a baby because the actress is very pregnant. So
is that why?
That's why she was sitting at the counter the way she was. She's
right.
Really pregnant. So Lisa Berry has to go pop that kid out. And so, Death may not be showing up on screen anymore because Lisa's busy.
That's funny.
She's got to make it somewhere else in time, right? So yes,
I'm assuming that because Chuck's been destroying the Earth, that this is an opening for them to where he's not paying attention right now, and that's why they're able to go off script. Which, by the way, I remember. I don't know if you guys remember, but a few of us were griping about the whole pick lock thing. And so I had that moment whenever he's Kid Dean and he's trying to pick that lock. And she goes, "You're not very good at that." And then he opens and I go, "Was that because God let him open?"
yeah.
Well,
That's right.
that kind of makes me think about that episode when we were trying to decide whether it was luck or whether it was skill. And if you remember way back to the very early seasons with the first appearance of Death, is that he was fascinated by these two guys, these two ordinary people that just seemed to keep defying the laws of the universe.
Right.
And they kept showing up on his radar as, these guys they're not normal, and it fascinated him. It drew him in. And so maybe there is something to that. The luck side of thing is that Chuck was kind of making them abnormally shine in comparison to the rest of humanity.
You sure it wasn't the pizza? He was pretty fond of the pizza.
Or the pizza, yeah, the free food.
Yeah, there you go. Well, now the last topic I wanted to bring up myself has to do with that last conversation in the car, when Sam is having his reaction, as probably anybody would, unless you really just didn't like Jack or whatever. That Dean says, "This is the only way we will ever be free. You don't get a choice. We don't get a choice." Well, did it strike anybody else as kind of ironic that they're discussing that he's bringing up, they're fighting to be able to have free will, and yet he's telling Sam, "Well, you don't have any yet," or "You don't have any at all." And there have been so many times that Dean has railed against this aspect of what they've gone through, especially since in the more recent seasons, and since Chuck has played a bigger role that was more sinister, I guess I could say, that rather than when it was all very meta in the beginning and it was kind of amusing and all that kind of stuff, and sometimes profound, but it didn't get sinister until more recently, really. So when he said that, I thought, but this is what you're fighting for, is so that you can actually do this. And is it the only way that you think you can get there is by taking away somebody else's free will or something? These are just some of the things that were occurring to me when I heard this, and I'm curious how it affected you guys when you heard it. What do you see as being the further implications of him saying that? And Damien, we'll start with you.
For me, I like it. It's actually pretty weird that at this point he's flipped on the whole Jack should die thing. In order to just end all of this, right? It's like, I guess someone's got to die. Let it be Jack, not us. Which typically it's, hey, we'll go out dying, if we have to. So that seems like a big flip. And like for me, I'm going to need some kind of plausible reason behind that flip within these next 4 episodes. Because that part doesn't quite sit right with me. They're not when and I get the whole, I guess they're going to continue to hold with the whole, he killed your mom thing. Yeah, they addressed that. They've addressed it multiple different times. They addressed it the other week where he was like, hey,
right,
man, I get it, but I'm trying. Right? But now it's, I'm okay with him dying. Doesn't seem like. So, and again, to go back to what Marks was saying, Gail, maybe there's something else at play with Dean that we're not privy to as the audience just yet, that'll slowly creep in over these next 4 episodes.
Yeah, maybe we'll see him writing notes instead of talking in the car. It's like maybe she's able to manifest.
What, and leaving them on hamburger wrappers and napkins? Ketchup and barbecue sauce?
Exactly. There you go. Kristen.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the recurring theme for me that just kind of was added in, the free will versus the grand master plan. So that's kind of how I was interpreting it. in the context of all the rest of the show. It was like hitting all the little highlights of Supernatural, and that argument has been done in the past, and so that was kind of the way they addressed the free will versus master plan in the episode. So I didn't read anything really deeply into it, but I can see your points that yeah, there could be something going on more than just checking off all the notes, okay, from past seasons,
Right.
one by one, and the free will was it was missing. Oh yeah, let's put that in at the end. So.
Yeah, let's stick this part. Yeah.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, I think with that conversation with Amara, I mean, it could be a mistake in the writing, because I do think if it would be a mistake at his arc to go back to that. But I also wonder, like, he's trying to trick her in a way too, because they do plan at that point killing her. So I think he's trying to convince her that he's on for whatever it takes, at that moment at least. So that's what I'm hoping, at least. And he doesn't actually want Jack to die necessarily, because we didn't hear the conversation Dean had with Cass. Now, Cass does want to look for another way, and I think they have another way. I think they may have given it to us in that conversation with Amara, maybe, because
okay,
yeah, because so I've always thought, like, well, one thing I thought they might do is that they're a balance, so maybe Amara's becoming good and now Chuck's becoming evil, and they need a prison Chuck or whatever. Then I thought other things, but then when they talked about how they used to be one and they split, and that's what created the universe, it's like, well, maybe that's it. You just need to combine them, because just like any human being, if you split us in good and bad, we're going to be a little weird. So, but maybe if you combine the two of them together, they'll both have, both sides, and that would be helpful. And that would also avoid the whole flash forward of if God's gone and monsters, take over and stuff too. It will maintain a balance. So I'm hoping that's where they're going with it, maybe, because that's what I took pretty big from that conversation. I don't know. We'll see. It may go, who knows what. Arrow and Flash may pop in and go, oh, your Earth's getting destroyed. Sorry.
That's right. It'd be a little late, but yeah, that would be, you've been wondering why these were disappearing. Well, this is really why. Gail?
I think the whole idea of possibly needing Amara and Chuck to mesh again and bring things back into balance is viable, because if you remember the episode with Dark Charlie, who came through, split apart from Oz, and then they had to put her back together again. So it wouldn't be, there is precedent in the supernatural universe. I'm also thinking, like Mark said, we didn't hear the whole conversation with Cass and Dean. So it wouldn't be the first time Supernatural made us think we knew what was said, only to later show us that there was more to the conversation that was withheld because of strategy. So, I think that's very possible. I just think it's either horrendously bad writing or Dean's playing a long game, and maybe for believability, he needs to have Sam be angry at him about it so that Amara or Death or whatever believes that Dean's going to do this, because if Sam wasn't sufficiently angry at Dean, then maybe she'd doubt that Dean was going to go along with the plan until, he throws monkey wrench in at the end. Of course, with the Winchesters, the problem with that is Sam is likely to stomp off and make some sort of deal, spell, something that makes the whole thing worse, because, well, Dean, you said you were going to kill Jack. I didn't mean for you to believe me. Well, you needed to tell me something. I can just see that happening after Sam's gone and done something. Although I don't think they really have time for that.
And they did make the statement, I believe it was the very end of season 14, and kind of reaffirmed it at the beginning of this one, that they understood that they had to allow the kind of the petty, what we see them as being petty disagreements between them, that they have to kind of get past that, because what they're facing is going to take both of them, and so that they know that they have to kind of do that. And the very last line in the episode is when Dean's trying to apologize and Sam says, just drive, don't talk, just drive. And so at that point, well, plus they're on the road, it's not as though he can, he's not going to tell him to stop in the middle of wherever and let him out of the car. So there is that. I mean, hopefully we don't have to worry about that too much. Beth.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction, especially when Dean was talking about not having a choice, was like, what, like whatever happened to Team Free Will? Like, come on.
Right.
And I do think it's weird that they have been seeming to take Billy at her word. Like, okay, well, she's saying this, it must be true, then we have to act accordingly. But on the other hand, I do feel like in some ways that's kind of in line for Dean's character in some ways. When he was younger, he was so devoted to his dad. What dad says goes, and this is the way it has to be. And because dad says it is, like that was just kind of like dad's word was gospel. And I've said before many times that I feel like Dean has spent a lot of years kind of try and fill that father figure role, find somebody to be a substitute because his own dad is obviously not there anymore. So I feel like a lot of times when somebody tells him this is what's going to happen, it's how it has to be, he tends to really latch onto that in a very, very stubborn way. I think because there's a part of him that maybe wants that guidance. He wants somebody just to give him, here's the solution. If you do this, everything will be fine. Even that if that solution involves really terrible things like having to lose somebody that he cares about. So I feel like I didn't necessarily get the sense that Dean has some plan B in mind that he's thinking of and not willing to let on to Sam or Billy or anybody that he knows. I felt like maybe it was just kind of Dean being Dean, that he gets very, he's like kind of a one-track mind about things sometimes when he has something in his sights, some kind of a goal or a solution. So I think that's unhealthy for him and can lead to bad consequences because he just refuses sometimes to look at alternate solutions that could be better.
Yeah, he's always been good about that, having those blinders on, and yet he's as he's matured and the stuff that he's been through personally, I think he's gotten a little better about taking them off periodically, so that he can see what's out there, because it didn't take him too long to figure out that things were not quite as black and white as as he had originally approached life and his job and all of that. Now we have a comment here about, let's not forget that Uncle Michael is still in play. So does anybody want to address that idea?
Well, we've got another disposable Winchester. There's Adam.
Yeah,
that's right.
So,
Yeah.
if you're going to have a sacrifice, that's kind of why Adam exists.
Yeah, poor guy. I mean, it's I think we talked about him a little bit in our in the panel we did during Dragon Con. That was the season look back over the first 13 episodes, and we did mention some things about Adam and how that whole I guess just that part of the story, it's not as they can't leave it without resolving it. And yet at the same time, they're kind of like, everybody had a different idea about whether or not it was very satisfying or not, the way they brought him back. But yeah, I mean, there are 4 episodes, so who knows what they may do to us.
Well, that could be a part of that, like I was saying last week with the nuclear fission versus fusion.
Mm-hmm.
And since death split them apart, and they could come back together. Well, Michael and Adam are kind of an example of a combined being. that they're both kind of in the same physical space, and they worked out between themselves, a happy balance. So, with Death saying, the way to do this is to kill everyone. Well, maybe it's, joining together instead. And like with the, Gail was saying with the Buffy, as Star Trek had the same thing too. The two Kirks, split them in half in the transporter, and you had the negative side and the positive side, and you didn't get the whole person until it was back together. So they might be kind of seeding little examples of that solution throughout the season.
Yeah,
And remember, I don't know, when Cass and Sergei were helping Jack, and Sergei was kind of bargaining for an object, was that something like Death's knife, or help me out? What was that object? Because I could have sworn it was something related to Death that they had in the bunker. So maybe there's like a mystical instrument that could be drawn up in these final.
Didn't you want like the key to Death's door or something?
Yeah, it was something to do with Death. So maybe that object is going to play into whatever these final episodes and the final confrontation and the solution.
Maybe that's what Cass went off to find.
Maybe.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. And he seems to think that he has a good shot at, or at least it's worth it, to go and check it out. So
We'll find divine super glue, just glue.
That's what we need. Yes.
Well, a key can open and a key can close things.
Yeah.
Right. Can lock them. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Make them.
Yeah.
Well,
he wants the key to death. I just looked it up. The key to death.
Okay.
The door doesn't say the realm of the dead. The key to death.
Huh.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's very specific and yet not, right? So a little bit of both.
Well, that's a different CW show. That's Lock and Key. I'm not sure if that's coming back yet.
Yeah. Lock and Key did get renewed, but who knows? They've canceled some other things. So,
according to SuperWiki, it is a key that can grant access to Death's reading room. Back to the books. And there's a preview for an upcoming episode where Sam is on his knees in Death's reading room looking like he can't breathe.
Huh.
Yeah.
Asthma?
Could be.
So maybe they use that to sneak in there and see what
all those dusty
really
books
happened. Right?
Yeah.
It's been here for a while.
Oh my. Lots. Well, this is fun, of course, to speculate, and I don't know. We'll go all the way through the finale, and then we might have to think about it for a few weeks, and then come back and do another one and be like, "Well, I don't know what." Anyway, that we just we were wrong, and we were, anyway. But we're about out of time, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time every Monday evening to come and do this. I appreciate that. We appreciate everybody who watches this live with us and comments, and we appreciate the people who watch it later. There are a lot of people who can't be here with us live, but the point of doing it live is so that people do have the option to join us if they would like. And just to let anybody who's viewing know that we will continue to do this through the end of the season, and it could be that the episode for the finale will get it worked out, but we may do our panel sooner than waiting till Monday, because I'm sure there will be a lot of people who will want to talk about it, including us. And but we'll work that out, and then we'll make sure that it gets advertised appropriately. So anyway, thanks very much, everyone. We appreciate it, and we will see you here on the DragonCon Urban Fantasy Track YouTube channel, whether you're here through Facebook or through Twitter. We appreciate it, and we will see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.